Hey there, welcome back to She Speaks Life. I am so thrilled that you are here listening to this episode today. And hey, I want to extend an invitation to you to check out my published journal called Serenity, Calm Your Soul and Strengthen Your Spirit for your time with the Lord. This personalized scripture journal is so good because it allows you to write your name within the scripture verse, providing you with a personal directive to take heed of the truth in your life. This journal covers 5 topics to choose from with 2 weeks of scripture for whatever you're walking in, such as contentment, confidence, loneliness, hope, and peace. In addition, the journal includes journal prompts and an activation prayer to release your faith in what you are relying on God to do in and through your life. So to purchase, just simply click the link below in the show notes and it'll take you to jaymeelizabeth.com and you can order on my shop page. But while you're there, make sure you take my fun quiz to find out what type of journaler you are, or if you don't journal at all, you can find out all the healthy benefits of journaling. And of course, if you take the quiz, I give you a discount plus free shipping because hey, who doesn't love a discount of free shipping? Love it. Okay, today I'm so excited to introduce to you Bridgette Cameron Ridenour. She is the younger sister of Kirk and sister of Candace Bure and Melissa. She wrote a book called Overlooked, and how sometimes in life we can feel like God missed us and is fulfilling other people's dreams but ours. Bridgette takes us through her upbringing and what it was like before and after being known in the entertainment industry. And I had so much fun walking through the similarities of being an 80s kid and growing up in California as well. It was so fun to talk to her, and I got to enjoy reading her intriguing book over the weekend. How awesome to see her life unfold with God always being there with her and how she was never overlooked in his story. And I love how so many times we can look back, connect the dots that God had for us, and see how many good blessings there were, even though life didn't go the way we thought it would go. I am so glad that we have a Father that sees everything and has always our best and nothing less, and how in life it's the eternal things that matter, and that he always wants to show himself through it all for his glory. Will you let him write your story? Watch what he'll do in that surrender and see his greatest purpose and plan for your life. Are you ready for this fabulous conversation? I am. Here's my guest. You'll love her, Bridgette Cameron Ridenour. Hi, Bridgette. Welcome to She Speaks Life. I am so thrilled you are on here today. Thanks for coming on here.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Yeah, this is so fun. I got to read your book. You wrote Overlooked, and I got to read your book over the weekend, and I enjoyed it so much. It was so intriguing. It was emotional. It was entertaining. Your writing style is just superb. I couldn't put it down. I just kept wanting to turn to the next page. What's going to happen next? And your story is so interesting. And so you are the younger sister of Kirk Cameron, but the older sister of Candace Bure. And so you are talking about your life story of your upbringing and how you felt like you were overlooked because you got to see Candace and Kurt just get well known in the public eye. But you in itself, your story is so amazing. And I love seeing God's handprint through it all and the lessons that you learned along the way, and how each of us are known and chosen by God. And there's a purpose and a plan for each of our lives. And so I just would like to have you start us out with your favorite scripture verse, because I know we can find out so much about a person just by asking, what is your favorite scripture verse and why?
I always kind of had that thought of, I I want my life verse. I didn't have one, to be completely honest. I didn't really have one. And I was meeting all these ladies and stuff. Oh, my life verse is this, or my life verse is this. And I was like, wow, Lord, like, could you send me my life verse? I don't want to just pick one. I really want it to mean something, and I really want it to be special. God gave me my life verse, my favorite verse, on a very tragic day in 2015, which is Jeremiah 9:11. That says, "For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, not to harm you, but to prosper you, give you hope and a future." And it was just a day of tragedy and, kind of a day of just a turning point for me in my life, and feeling overlooked and feeling like, God, why haven't you opened these doors for me? And he clearly spoke to me that day. And I write about that story in my book. I share a lot of childhood stories and stuff. So it's a fun book. But yeah, I would have to say that's probably my favorite is Jeremiah 29:11. But I also like to, one of my favorites is Psalm 46:10, which is, "Be still and know that I am God." There's just so much in that, that it's hard in kind of the world that we live in, to be still, because we live in a world with, everything is at our fingertips, fast food and Siri and, Google and all of that stuff. It's like, what happened to the waiting? What happened to being able to wait for things and being content in that waiting? And then, the second part of that is know that I am God. And it's just like, oh man, it's like all those times that those doors close or whatever. And he says, know that I am God. And so I would say those are my two favorites.
Yeah, I love it. And be still, know that I'm God. I have a testimony with that in my life. It was a time where I was extremely fearful. We were actually moving from Southern California to Austin, and we were in the middle of the Rockies in Colorado. And I was just terrified, moving. I had 3 small kids, and we didn't know where we were actually going to land in Austin. We were just faithfully knowing God was going to point us to the right home at the right time. And so, in that time, I just clearly heard him speak his spirit into my spirit, and said, "Be still and know that I'm God." And instantly that fear went away. It was just so comforting to know that he's more powerful than anything that we are going through, and that he's got us in the palm of his hand. And so I love that. I love that verse. It hits home for me too. Okay, so as I was going through your book over the weekend, I was laughing at so many similarities when it came to just the things growing up in the 80s. I was a high schooler in the 90s, but I had the strawberry shortcake dolls. I had the Cabbage Patch dolls, and my family rode around in a VW van also. And stomping grounds, you being, raised in LA, I was in Southern California. So I'm familiar with the places that you shared in your book. And also the relationship that you had with Kirk. I was laughing so hard because it's so similar to my older brother, and how the teasing was the same with the whole spit game. And then you had a story that I'll have you share, but you were on your big wheel. My big wheel, it was a strawberry shortcake big wheel of all things. And so, I would just jam on that thing, just like you. You're like, I was pedaling like a fiend. Your humor as you write is just so great. And that you and Kirk came up with this idea, right, to pull him. And so my thing was, my brother and I came up with this idea that I was going to ride on the front of his handlebars, right? And he was just going to tear off. And then he decided to do like this wonderful, what he thought was going to be this wonderful, just total burnout, right? This churn, real sharp, right? Just similar to what you did. And there was dirt on the cement. So the tire just swept right. I just flew off the handlebars and off I went to the ER for a split chin. And so anyway, I would love for you.
I can seriously visualize it, and I want to say we have the
Yeah,
best childhoods. Like, we
totally. I know. I'm like, oh my gosh, the playing outside and not thinking things through, right? It's like, it's so great. I know. We really did. And just great sibling memories too. I mean, it's just precious. And so I would love for you to share more about what was it like growing up with your siblings and how it felt when things became like, okay, we're just this normal family to, oh my gosh, things started to change. We're becoming a little more obvious in the public's eye.
It was crazy. I mean, just getting into Hollywood was just something that was so like unknown to us. My parents and
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't come from that. I mean, my grandmother, dad's mom, she was very musically gifted, played the piano and things like that. I remember she took me to my very first musical of, I think it was like King and I or something, and that's where I fell in love with musical theater. Um, but just growing up, with us four kids, there's another sister, Melissa, between Candace and I. And so Kirk's the oldest, I'm the oldest daughter, and then there's Melissa, and Candace is the baby. And so, yeah, growing with two other sisters and a brother, it was just like a normal family. Like I share in the book, like
Yeah.
the split thing and the big wheel, and my sisters and I making up a different language so Kirk wouldn't know that we were talking about him. It's just that was
Yeah.
just normal. We had chores and home, and we fought, and all of that stuff. So that part of it was just, yes, it was a very normal family. But on the outside of those walls, it was very, very different. I had two siblings in the public eye, so it was difficult at times to go places, go to any kind of amusement park. That was just like something we just couldn't do. We tried, but even being in disguise, it was like people would notice. And so it was just hard, and there were some scary times too, but there were also some really great and fun and exciting memories as well. So,
Mm-hmm.
it was a crazy childhood, but I wouldn't change it for the world. I mean, it's looking back on it
Yeah.
now, that was just some great fun.
Yeah, well, we have similarities too. I forgot. So there was four of us also. So and one brother, he was the oldest, and then three of us girls. So so similar. And then my dad, he was a police officer for LAPD, and my mom was a special ed teacher. So it
Oh,
was the same, middle class and and it was just so I could relate to like okay, just a normal household, normal family, and then somebody introduces you to, the entertainment industry, and then just in one day, it can totally change the trajectory, the direction that you guys were going. So, but for, his glory, because all you kids are shining God's light in, in the public eye, in the entertainment industry. And so it's all for his glory and his purpose and plan. So I think it's just awesome. And I wanted to take us back to that day where your friend of your family's introduced you to an agent. And I could see that this is probably your first test, like your first trial in life where, you wanted something, but then it was a closed door. So how did that feel when the agent was like saying yes to your siblings, but you're no, not for today for you? How did that feel?
yeah, just being a little girl at 8 years old, you know, I remember like not really understanding why I wasn't chosen that day, and But the agent did say, which I had already known prior to, that I was going to need braces. So when the agent said, I'm not going to take Bridgette because I think she's going to need braces and this and that, and when my mom shared that with me, I thought, okay, well, yeah, we have an orthodontist. We have talked about, having that journey with me. So I was just like, okay, that's fine. The agent did say, come back when your braces are off. Well, that was a very, very, very long journey with braces, way longer than I think any of us had expected. But yeah, not being picked that day, there was that. But my parents were very, very good at always keeping us together as a family, encouraging and being excited for the rest of us. I mean, Melissa and I, we were in plays and recitals and things like that, and so we could be walking the red carpet one day, but the next day our whole family was watching us in a school play or a dance recital or something like that. That's just what our family did and what my parents did. And when my mom could take Melissa and I to any kind of a public appearance that Kirk or Candace is doing, she did. If we could all go as a family, we did. So we were always together and we were always encouraging each other. And it was fun for Melissa and I too. I mean, even Candace, before, she got Full House, I mean, girls that were fans of Kirk's, they started to recognize us from magazines and things like that. So when they would see us there too, it was exciting because they were asking us for our autograph or pictures or whatever. So, it was. So I think kind of that thought of being, wow, God's not opening this door for me in being child star, but look at all the fun that that we are having. So
yeah, I think that's so awesome and amazing that your parents made that be like a celebration for all of you guys. As I was reading in your story, because that could be so easily a tool that the enemy could have used to divide you siblings, right? Where, jealousy would kick in and comparison, and it could tear families apart, especially with siblings, where, if you don't have the cohesiveness that your parents are setting in the beginning, hey, we're going to celebrate each other, each one of you guys, and show up to each of your guys' events, no matter, what it is, to be each other's cheerleader. I thought that was really amazing when I was reading your story about that. So good. Great parents there that you have.
yeah, they are pretty good parents. And not to say that, we didn't have that going on. I mean, like I shared, we were a normal family inside that home, and that was true. My parents, Kirk and Candace, really got into their careers and started becoming more and more popular and things. But it did start to divide my parents. And my mom was managing both of their careers at the time. And so she'd be on the set of Growing Pains or on the set of, Full House. And we eventually had to get help to take, Candace to other auditions or take her to work or, things like that. So, Satan did come into those walls and started to try to divide our family and my parents. And there was a point where my parents separated when we were seniors in high school. Kirk and I are about 11 months apart. So when we were seniors, my parents split and my mom moved out. And, but God still had his hand in that because they never did divorce, and they, are back together, and they're going to be celebrating, 55 years of marriage, this June. So it's just, Satan, but the Lord, the Lord wins all the time. So,
yes, he does.
Yeah.
And they got saved too. They became believers later on, and so having now God as their foundation. And I love how it started with Kurt and how he met somebody to introduce him to church and all that. And then one by one, you guys gradually were interested and curious, what is this faith life all about? So that was so fun to see.
It's interesting because when people see or hear the Cameron name and they see Kirk or Candace, talk, nowadays, they think that we grew up in a Christian home. Oh, they've been Christians their whole life. They know what they're talking about, da da da. And we weren't. We didn't grow up in a Christian home. We fell into that CEO category as a family of Christmas and Easter only. And that was really the truth. There was no nativity scene growing up. My dad's parents were atheists. My dad was an atheist. He didn't want anything. My mom knew Christ as a little girl, but because my dad didn't want it in the house, she didn't really push it. And like you said, it wasn't until Kirk met someone that he was dating and went to church for the first time, heard the gospel, and the pastor asking the congregation, if you were to die today, would you be going to heaven or hell? And Kirk thought, well, gosh, by what the pastor is telling me, I wouldn't be going to heaven, even though I'm doing all of these wonderful things for different charities and things like that. That's not going to get me into the kingdom. So there should be something different. And so Kirk was driving home that day, pulled off to the shoulder of because the Lord was really stirring his spirit and in his heart. And he prayed the most raw and real prayer right there off of the free in his car, and was, just kind of like, Lord, I honestly don't even know how to pray, but I know that I need you. If what I heard today is true, I wouldn't be going to heaven. And I want to go to heaven. And he asked Jesus into his heart. And then it was funny because, it wasn't like Kirk came home and was like, blah, 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 and just like spewing it like into the family. It wasn't like that again. Our parents were separated and everything, but he just started planting those seeds and just started, sharing what he had learned at church or in youth group. And then the music he was listening to was changing. His brotherly, things were changing. He was nicer. His attitude was nice. And then his character on Growing Pains, Mike Seaver, was changing. He wasn't, doing the things that Mike Seaver wanted to do. And so because Kirk and I are so close in age, I really respect him. I trust in what he's learning or teaching. And so, again, it was just kind of those little seeds that he was just going into me and Melissa and Candace and back into my mom. And my dad being a school teacher, I'm sure, as you can imagine, like with your mom, my dad had questions, and he didn't want just surface answers. He wanted deep answers, and he questioned everything.
Right.
And so, so it wasn't, it took my dad a very, very, very long time, but he eventually did accept the Lord. And on a men's getaway weekend at the church, was able to baptize my dad. And it was amazing. My parents, like I said, stayed together, and, their marriage is super strong. And it's just amazing, the plan and the purpose that God has for you, even when you may not even know him, like us. He had a plan and a purpose, and he was going to use us for his glory, for his kingdom. And so never doubt what God's doing, ever.
Right. I know. No matter what it looks like. Okay. So as you were growing up, you're faced with a lot of rejection. How did you move forward? You were in stand-ins a lot, acting. You were on Growing Pains and Home Improvement, I believe. And so you got some roles and some parts, but what kept you moving when, all you got was a bunch of no's? Because I was reading about you auditioning for Wizard of Oz. Now, my daughter, she's an up and rising actress, wants to, do a faith film. She's in a featured film. It's coming out later on this year, and it's faith-based. So I have gone through those yeses with her and those no's. And when you have that desire to want this role and you get back something that you thought was in the can, how did that all feel? How did you move through the rejections?
Well, I mean, honestly, those rejections hurt. I'm not going to say that, oh, I just moved on fine. It was like no big deal.
Right.
No, that audition for The Wizard of Oz, was a musical, and it was the traveling Los Angeles musical of The Wizard of Oz. And the choreographer pulled me out of group at the audition. She pulled me out specifically myself and taught me a whole different routine to learn. And she said afterwards, "You are really, really good." And then someone else came up to me afterwards and said, "Are you ready to go on tour? Because you just nailed the audition." I thought I had it because I was,
Right.
the perfect part. I'm 11. I'm tiny.
Yeah.
I fit the height requirement of a munchkin. And it was like, I can, dance, and I can act, and I can, sing with a group and all of that kind of stuff. So I thought, this is just perfect. And when that door closed, it hurt. I mean, it was just devastating. But it was the moment that I really knew this is not going to go. This is not going to go any farther. Like, my days of trying this, I'm not, because it's just, I don't want to keep hearing the no's and no's and no's. And, I'm just going to have to figure it out. I was doing stand-in work at the time. I was working on Full House or Home Improvement, or doing commercials or movies, for child stars. And I just thought, okay, I'm just going to keep going. I'm just going to keep doing it. Well, lo and behold, right after that audition, I met my now husband, John, and we'll be married 24 years this year. And, if I had gotten that audition, I probably would have been gone for a year or more traveling.
Yeah.
And maybe that relationship with John never would have worked out. So, even though in the heartache and everything, God has a bigger and better plan. We might not always know what it is in the moment, but if we believe in God and we believe in His word, then we just have to trust that His plan and His purpose for us is better than what we could ever imagine.
Yeah, I love how we can look back and connect the dots, right? To see where Jesus has taken us, and it's so wonderful. And you have a major vehicle accident, and that's when that changed the trajectory of when you're like, okay, God has a plan and a purpose. So let's take it from there. Like, after that accident, how did that change you to where you're like, okay, I realize, like, it's not going to look like how I thought it was going to look like. So tell us, like, all the things that God started to, like, bring your way.
Yeah, the accident was it was very, very tragic. I mean, the only way that I can describe it is, honestly, it was like a Hollywood movie. We were stopped behind a semi truck in a dirt storm in Groom, Texas. We couldn't see beyond the windshield of our car. My husband got a nudge from God to move the car away from the back of that semi to the shoulder. And no sooner after that, my husband did move the car, a semi truck going full speed came and slammed into the back of the semi that we were just behind. The cab exploded, and that driver died instantly. And the impact, I still can hear the screeching of the metal of, I can feel the heat from the fire of that semi. And then God nudged me to get my daughter from the back seat next to me, and I buckled her in. And no sooner after that, another semi truck that was going full speed didn't stop. It hit the back of our car this time and pushed us down into this ravine and wedged itself. And we had to get out of the car on the passenger side. And we found out later that there were actually semi trucks that hit each other that day, and our SUV. And there was the one fatality of one of the drivers. And during this whole accident, there was so much chaos going on. I mean, I was on the phone with 911 trying to tell them our location, but I had no idea where we were. And there were, the first responders that were coming and this and that, but I kept seeing Jeremiah 29:11 in my mind. And I kept seeing it over and over and over. And, looking back on it, started to get a little annoyed because I thought everything going on around me, God, you want me to notice something that you're trying to tell me. And I was just like, okay, I don't know what you're trying to say to me. But I just kept seeing the words Jeremiah 29:11, and my Bible and everything was in the back of our car. So I couldn't look to see what it was until we got to the motel in Groom. And I knew that there was a Bible in the nightstand, and I burst through the doors and I grabbed that Bible and I opened it. And Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, not to harm you, but to prosper you, to give you hope and a future." And I just fell to the floor, just sobbing. And then I heard God's Spirit speak to my spirit and said, "Bridgette, all those years that you thought I'd forgotten you, that you thought I had overlooked you, all the jealousy, all the hurt, all the anger, I have such big plans for you, but you have to promise that it's in my timing that I'm going to show you what that is." And it was at that moment that I really felt that I just had to surrender all of those emotions of being angry and feeling like God's never going to open a door for me. I just had to surrender because it took this tragedy for him to tell me this. And I mean, how do you, in something like that, how do you just look at God and go, really? Like, if you haven't done it in the past, like, you're really going to sit here and tell me that you're going to open doors for me now all of a sudden? But man, like, what a way to get my attention, right? Like,
right.
But I did. I finally just kind of just said to myself, okay, still and know that I am God and God has plans for me, and enjoy the seasons that I'm in. I mean, I was, a mom of 3, a wife, and I had to just embrace the season that God had me in, of being a mom and being a wife, even though looking back on it now, it's one of the most beautiful and most precious seasons of my life. And I would not take it back for a second. But in that moment of being a mom, you're like in the thick of it, right? There's times when you just want to give up and you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to have to be responsible for anyone. And I don't want anyone to have to ask me for something. But it's one of the most precious seasons that God can give us, is being a mom and pouring his love and his word into our children and raising our children to know him. And again, I just had to surrender that and go, okay, Lord, I'm gonna do what you asked me to do to the best of my ability with your help. And I trust you that you will see the desires of my heart and open those doors if it's in your will to do that.
That's so good. Surrender, that word surrender. There's just so many times where in my own life where it was like that point of just surrender. And then I started to see God open up opportunities. I watched my daughter, go through her surrender and seeing, open doors from him. Because I truly believe that in that surrender, that's when we're delighting in him. Like that verse, it first says, delight in him and he will give you the desires of your heart. And so I think in that surrender, we're delighting in his will, right? And what he wants for us. And so then we can line it up with our heart's desire is going to then line up with what his will is for us. And so first though, I know he's looking for us to just, surrender everything to him and just get rid of, everything about us and only focus on him and his word, his will, and his purpose for our lives. And so, and that's delighting in him.
It's amazing too, because if I look back and think, if he had given me all the desires of my heart, the selfish desires of my heart, of everything that I wanted, those seasons of being a mom and those moments that I had with my kids may not have ever happened for me. but yet I wanted all of these other things. And now, I look back and I just go, man, I'm so glad I didn't
Yeah.
miss that,
Yeah.
and it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was sharing Psalm 46:10, be still. Being still is hard because that puts us in a waiting time, right? It puts
Mm-hmm.
us waiting, and waiting is such a hard thing to do. Who wants to wait anymore in this world and this generation that we live in? We don't have to wait for anything. And I think waiting on the Lord is even harder, because when you have that
Mm-hmm.
personal relationship with him and you're in his word, and you're like, okay, Lord, I'm going to wait for you to give me those answers, because I want to make sure that it's right. Whether it's, good or bad, I want to make sure that it's right. And waiting on the Lord is so hard. But there's an author, and she has a quote that I love so much. Her name is Vinitha Randall Reisner, and she says, the most precious answer God can give us is wait, because it makes us cling to him rather than to the outcome. And I love that,
Mm-hmm.
because it's like, what does God really want us to do? He wants us to cling to him and not to what is out there, and that all these things that we have in this world. He wants us to run to him, cling to his word,
Yeah.
and be in his word, and wait for his decision for you, whether it's good or bad.
Yeah.
And there are going to be not so great times where you think, Lord, I know you're going to open this door, and he's like, nope. And you're just like,
Yeah.
okay, really? But we just have to
Yeah.
trust. And that's hard.
Yeah. Just was praying one day and I go, God, I want to be that girl that when I get disappointed, I want to know and feel like it's for my good, that you're good, and it's for my good, and it's for my protection, like instantly, not like later on. Cause I know we may kick and scream and cry, and it's good to address our feelings, but at the same time I want to be that girl that knows it's for my best, because my father sees the whole picture. He sees that whole parade at Disneyland when we're just sitting on the curb and we can just see what's in front of us, right? But I have this image of how God can see overall, the beginning and the end of this whole parade of life, and how maybe we're not ready to handle what he wants to bestow to us, right? Because it's, we got to think, I mean, God is grand. He's, full. The blessings is not mediocre. I mean, it is grand and royal and abundant. I look back at how he created the whole earth just for Adam, right? In the beginning, how much more is he going to give us? And it's okay, Lord, I'm going to rest in that and know you have my best. Resting in his goodness, really, and just trusting, like you said, is just so key. And I think that takes spiritual maturity, that takes experience with God and your relationship with him to see, okay, if he is faithful, then he's going to be faithful now. And, but he never, ever will let us down, because he's got the extreme best for us. And I could see that in your book at the end of your story. I mean, it's just incredible. So I would love for you to share how, if somebody's feeling overlooked, how could they overcome feeling overlooked? And then finish with a takeaway for us. Maybe there was something that you didn't get a chance to share, you want to share, but we would love to hear your wisdom on this.
Yeah, I think just, for both of those, it's, I think for someone that is feeling overlooked, just know that God created you. God knows the desire of your heart, and he writes a better story. My story's different than yours. Yours is different. If we all had the same story, what a boring world we would live in, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just trust that God knows those thoughts and those feelings, and he has you in those seasons for a reason. But um just be encouraged. get like be in a group of women that are encouraging, that are going to lift you up every day. Social media right now social media can be a great place, but it also can be really it really can be a not so great place, because it's such a space of comparison. If there's a mom that's going through the thick of, I don't want to be here right now, I don't want to be where I'm at, and they're seeing these other moms that are posting these, vacations and this and that's really a hard thing, because you start comparing, like, oh, she's doing all the things that I want to do, and here I am changing diapers and, whatever it is. But I can guarantee you that if you were to pull those layers off of that woman's social media and have a real conversation, you would know that that woman or that person has gone through or been there or is in the thick of what you're in too. She's just choosing not to share it. But God loves you. God will meet you right where you're at and cover you. And all I can say too is just give God the pen. Let him write your story, because he's got a better story than we can write for ourselves.
Yeah.
And just be still and know that he is God, and he will be there. He'll never leave you. He'll never forsake you. And enjoy the moment that you are. If you're in this season of motherhood, enjoy this season right now. Don't take it for granted, because in a blink, like, my kids are now all teenagers, and my husband and I are almost empty nesters. And I would, if I could go back to those seasons and pour more into my kids and cuddle them more and do all those things, I would do it in a second, because I can't, sometimes I can't do that anymore. Enjoy the seasons that God has you in. He has you there for a reason, and enjoy them. And then just wait for God to open those opportunities for you. I mean, it wasn't until now, they're grown. They're very self-sufficient and adults and all that. And now God is moving me into that space and that season of speaking and writing a book and all of that, which he had planned all those years.
Right.
So just trust that the story that he's writing is perfect, and you haven't been overlooked. Or you haven't been forgotten about.
So good. I mean, he's planned out our future before we were born. Before the foundation was laid. And, what an incredible God that we have, and that we, worship and give honor to, and how we don't have to try to be discovered or be known by him, but that he already handpicked us and chose us for such a time as this. And that, every day, like you said, I mean, now my kids are older, and, to tell those younger moms, like, even in the thick of it, like you said, enjoy every moment, because it does go by so fast, but, enjoying where we're at every moment as well, and know that God is just calling us to be faithful with what we have for today, what's in front of us today, and be content in that. And then every step he'll show us, the next step that he wants us to take in life. So, but be faithful with what we're at, where we're at now.
Yeah, and God will bless you in those moments that you're obedient to him.
Yeah, those who seek him diligently will be rewarded, and it's so true. Like, we will reap the benefits and the rewards, and whether we see it in the natural, or we see it in the supernatural, eternal fruits. We all know that that's the greatest, that's the best, and and watching your kids grow up and just enjoying them as they become adults. I mean, that's the best too. And it's such a gift from above, kids. So anyway, thank you so much, Bridgette, for coming on here. Where can people connect with you and get your awesome book? I highly recommend it. It's so good.
Oh, goodness. Well, you can get my book on Amazon, right now. You can order it, or you can take a look at my website, bridgettecameron.com. There's all kinds of resources and things there on how to get a hold of me. I'm on social media. So if you just, Bridgette Cameron, or if you want to attempt Bridgette Cameron Ridenour, you could, but you'll find me, one of the others, on my website too. If there's a listener who's like, God, we'd love to have her come and speak at our church or something, there's a resource button there where you can inquire about that too. So if the things that I have coming up, I'd love to meet any of your listeners and readers that are in that area.
So great. Well, you're such a joy, and you have so many amazing stories in this book. So grab your coffee, pictures, right? grab your copy and your coffee. What's that?
In the book are great.
Yes. Oh my goodness. So fun. I love that you put pictures in there.
The editor was like, are you sure you want to put this many pictures? I'm like, yeah, because I love pictures in the book. So I'm like,
it was so great. And I love that you put it in the middle of the book, because we got to read and then get to see the pictures on it, so it was fresh in our memory, and it was so great. I loved it. And so many, like I said, similarities, and that enjoy each and every picture and see where your guys' different stages in life. It was just great to have those visuals. So thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm so glad I could take you down a little memory lane of the 80s.
Yes, it was enjoyable. Yes. All right, Bridgette, thank you so much. I know we could talk all day. This is so awesome.
I know. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for listening today, and I trust that God has encouraged you through this story. Did you know this podcast is on YouTube? Hop on there and subscribe, and you can see a live recording of each episode. And for more information on this ministry and to access free downloads, please visit my website at jaymeelizabeth.com. That's JAYME Elizabeth.com. And let's connect beyond this podcast by going to my Instagram handle, Jayme Elizabeth, She Speaks Life, or Facebook. Until next time, my friend, I hope God reveals himself through your own life story.